In this lecture, I'm going to talk about question placement and sequence. Now, question placement has to be done pretty carefully. Generally, if a question or an answer to a question is influenced by prior questions, you want to make sure that they're placed in sequence. If questions come too early, for instance, or too late to arouse interest, we want to make sure that we don't do it. So, for instance, we generally want the most important questions to be in the center of the survey, in the middle of the survey. You start with easy questions, put the important ones in the middle, and then, towards the end, you put the sensitive questions. Questions should receive sufficient attention, especially the ones that are important to you. We generally want the opening questions to be easy to answer, and we want to make sure that they're not sensitive, right? So we don't want to ask sensitive questions until we build rapport, until we build some kind of a relationship, whether this is, in a face-to-face survey, email survey, or even a telephone survey. So we want sensitive questions to be asked towards the end, and we should try to get the respondent rolling, make them answer the easy questions. And therefore, as a rule, we don't want to have open-ended questions start a survey, because people get bogged down answering those long questions. They have a lot of energy to do it, and you'll lose them. Most of them will never complete your survey. The general rule is that sensitive questions only come after trust is developed. They should make sense in that section of the survey, and generally they should proceed with warm-up questions. If you're going to ask them something sensitive, put a transition and ask them a few questions that lead them, roll them into answering those questions. A general checklist of considerations. Start with easy, non-threatening questions. So threatening questions are questions like drug use, sexual habits, even things like income, gender, marital status, relationship status, sexual history, sexual preferences. All these should not come in the beginning. They have to always go towards the end of the survey. So are questions like religion and religious affiliation. Put these difficult, threatening questions near the end, after the interviewee is sufficiently comfortable answering questions. Never start a mail survey with an open-ended question, because as I just said, people are just going to sit down and respond to it. We generally don't do it for any of the surveys, but especially mail surveys, because you don't have any control over the individual responding to that question, and they're going to keep responding to it. They'll get tired, they'll get exhausted, and they'll not complete the rest of your survey. We almost always put demographic questions at the end, unless we're using a specific question to screen people. So for instance, if you're going to use a question like age, you want people to be 18 and over in your survey, or 40 and over, or 60 and over. We may use that as the first question. But usually, all these demographics like age, income, education, occupation, and gender go towards the end, because they're considered very sensitive questions. The only exception is in email surveys, the surveys which usually are emailed or which pop up, those pop-up surveys which people usually don't complete responding. And the reason we put demographics up front in these surveys is so that we have some answers from them. So even if they close the survey out, we get some response from them. Finally, as I said, I want to reiterate some of the considerations. So the checklist again. Avoid demographics at the beginning unless we're using it to screen. For any historical demographics, follow a chronological order. So if you're going to ask them about their various years of employment, start from the first job, second job, third job. So you have a historical chronological order. Ask about one topic at a time. When switching topics, use a transition. So you say, now that we're done talking about how you shop, let's say it's a survey on shopping, now I'm going to ask you questions about your demographics, or I'm going to ask some demographic questions. Keep the response set small. If you're using filter questions or contingency questions, especially in a visual survey that they're going to respond to, make sure the instructions are clear. Create a flowchart, for instance. And last but not the least, and this is the hardest part, keep your questionnaire as short as possible.